Hello there, this is Miss Nakayama, and today's lesson is 8.4a, graphing sine and cosine functions. So hopefully you did your warm-up, and more importantly, hope you checked your warm-up so that you saw, after finding the key points on each graph, you saw that y equals the sine of x and y equals the cosine x are functions that go on forever and ever in both directions. We are going to talk about putting an A and a B and actually a K with those parent functions that you had in your warm-up. So each of those, A is what we call an amplitude of the function, okay? And amplitude, you can think about it, actually more importantly, what I can tell you before I tell you that, it's always positive, y'all. That's what those are, absolute value signs around that letter A. And if you're a formula person, you can think of, when you look at a graph, it's the max minus the min divided by 2. If you're looking at a graph, if you're looking at an actual equation, it's that value at the beginning in front of your sine or cosine. Okay, so that's the amplitude. It is the height above the midline. Again, we're going to talk more about that, you'll see. Then we have something called the period. Okay, and that period is defined as 2 pi over the absolute value of b. And a period of a function, y'all, is how long it takes for it to repeat. So on a horizontal, I go from a max to a max. I'm going to talk about it as we go through this, so you'll see it. You'll hear about it a lot, but it's a section of the graph that repeats, and I could cut out that piece of the graph and slide it, and it would match another piece of the graph exactly. So the other thing that we're going to add to our functions is k, and k is the actual midline, what we call the midline of your function. And if you like formulas from the equation, okay, or looking at the graph, that midline, you can think of it as the max plus the min divided by 2, okay? Now, it's pretty easy to see it when you get it from a graph, but it's just good to have those concepts in your mind. So the first thing we're going to do is determine the equation of the midline, okay? And as I said, it's max plus min divided by 2 if you just want to calculate it when you have an equation. But when we're looking at it, we're looking at this graph and we're trying to find where is, sorry about that, where is that point at which, you know, here's a max right here, and here's another max, but here's a min, okay? So what's halfway between the max and min is this right here, that line right there. And that is your midline. So the midline tells you where half of the graph is above it and half of the graph is below it. It is an equation, so don't ever forget to write that equation. So the equation of my midline for this graph is y equals 2. Now, we're going to talk about how to write the equation of the line of this graph, because it's just going to help tie it all together, and you're going to have to do that sometimes. So when you look at the graph, when I say where does it start, well, we've already talked about it. It goes on forever and ever in both directions. So what I'm really talking about is what's going on at the y-axis. That's like its starting point. So this particular graph starts up here at a max of my function. And if it starts at a max of my function, then I know that it's going to be the cosine. So that's my basic function that I'm going to go find. I got to go find a, b, and k, because that's what's going to be different from one function to another. Kind of like when we do lines, y equals mx plus b, I got to go find m, which is my slope, and b, which is my y-intercept, to write the equation of that line. Y equals a cosine bx plus k, I've got to find the amplitude, I've got to find the period, because that's what b is involved with, and I've got to find the midline. So we found the midline. Next, I'm going to go find the period. And the period of a function, y'all, as I said, it's going from a max to a max, or you can go from a min to a min. How far is that distance? Well, my min to my min goes from 4 pi to 12 pi. The difference there is 8 pi. So my period is 8 pi. You can start here at 0. My max to my max is 8 pi. So you can see that the period is 8 pi. If you try to go from the midline, y'all, you've got to remember that you have to be going in the same direction. So if I go from this midline point, I can't go here because this one is going down, but that one is going up. So I go to the next midline point, which is right here. So 2 pi to 10 pi, again, is 8 pi. So do not put 8 pi here for b, because that's not the answer. What I'm going to do is take 8 pi and use my formula up here and set it equal to 2 pi over b. And when I switch those, I find out that b is equal to 1/4. So I have a, well, what is the distance, y'all? What's the distance from midline to a max? Or if you want to do max minus min divided by 2. But midline to a max is 1. So my a is 1, my b is 1/4, and my k is 2. So my equation looks like that. Y equals cosine 1/4 x plus 2. All right, let's look at the 1b. This says determine the amplitude of the graph. Okay, I just talked to you about what's the amplitude. Okay, the amplitude is how far is it above the midline. And the midline, because we're going to write the equation, we got to find the midline anyway. But if you want to go find, if you want to go take the max and the min and subtract them and divide by 2, you can do that. But I can tell that's my max and min, so I can tell right here, this is my midline. And again, it's important in writing and graphing, so it's always a good thing to note. So that's my midline. My midline here is y equals -3. Okay, so how far up to my maximum point? 2 units. So the amplitude of my graph is 2. Now, where did it start? So on my y-axis, remember at my midline, it's starting at the 0. So I say 0, y'all, because the parent function, it's at a 0. But it starts wherever your midline is. So my midline is down here. It started here. That means I'm dealing with the sine function. Y equals a times the sine of bx plus k. So a is my amplitude. We already found that right here. B is my period. I've got to go find the period of this function. So however you wish to do it, if you want to go from 0, not that one, but this one, okay, that's 0 to 2 pi. So that means that my period is 2 pi. Set that equal to 2 pi over b, and you can find out that b is equal to 1. And now, what is k? K is my midline. We already found that out at the beginning. So my equation is y equals 2 times the sine of x minus 3. All right, letter C, 1C. So we found the period, we found the midline, we found the amplitude. Now we're going to go find the period, okay? So where's the period? The period can be found. It's always important to find the midline, y'all. I'm going to find the midline. But here's a max, and here's a max. The distance between those two is a period. There's a min. There's a min. How far is it? So if I want to set, say, 5 pi over 4 to 25 pi over 4, well, how far is that? If I subtract the two of those, that's 20 pi over 4, which is 5 pi. So my period is 5 pi. I'm looking at the y-axis, and I've got to find the midline. The midline is halfway between those points. So that's going to be at -1, it looks like. So here's my midline. And the reason, again, that's going to help me find, we're going to write the equation. So if this is my midline, okay, and I'm finding out what happens at the y-axis, it's starting at the midline or starting at 0. So that means this is the sine function. And actually, on a small technically, every sine function can be written as a cosine function. But if you do it, what I'm telling you is the easiest one to pick. So if you want to know more about that, we'll get into it later. So because it's starting at the midline or starting at 0, it's the sine function. So y equals a times the sine of bx plus k. My period is 5 pi. That is equal to 2 pi over b. Switch those. I'm going to find out that b is equal to 2/5. So 2/5. And what is a? A is my amplitude going from the midline to a max, and so we find out that a is equal to 3, and that means that my equation is y equals 3 times the sine of 2/5 x minus 1, and that's what we have. Now we're going to quickly talk about graphing. You're going to have to do this in Delta Math, but he's going to make the nice little curves for you, so you don't have to worry so much about that. So to start off, y equals the sine of 2x. Always want to start with that midline, y'all. So my midline is k, equals 0. There is no plus anything. So my midline is y equals 0. My a value, what number is in front of the sine? Well, that's a 1 that we don't have to write. And my period is 2 pi over b. So that's 2 pi over 2, which of course simplifies to pi. So when you do that, the easiest way to do this, y'all, is to go out 4 tick marks. So this is my origin. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to write that as pi. And then half of that is pi over 2. And because this is the sine function, it starts at 0, or my midline. And that's 0 in this case. So I start at 0, and one whole period ends at the same place. That's what makes it periodic. In the sine function, okay, this is kind of what you got from your warm-up. Okay, halfway between is a 0. And then halfway between the first two, you go to a max. Halfway between the last two, you go to a min. And if you continue this pattern, you will see that your graph would look like this. And if you connect all those dots, I think mine's a little bit bigger, but let's just see what happens. Looks like that, okay? So, my dots are a little out of sync, but you got the idea there. Whoa, yep, that works, okay? So that's what your function will look like. All right, let's look at one other sine function. Y equals the sine of 1/2 x. Again, k is 0, which means my midline is y equals 0. All right, my a value is 1. That's my amplitude. And my period is 2 pi over 1/2. So that is 2 pi, keep change flip, 2 pi times 2 over 1. That's 4 pi. So this time, when I graph it, okay, I'm going to start and I'm going to go out 4 tick marks. Always go out 4 tick marks, y'all. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is 4 pi. Halfway is 2 pi. Okay? And now I'm ready to start graphing. And my sine function, okay, it's sine. It starts at 0, so I'm going to start at 0. At the end of my period is a 0. Halfway between is a 0. And then halfway between, I go up the amplitude. And my amplitude is 1, so I go up 1. Halfway between the last two, I go down 1. It's periodic. So it's going to continue with that pattern. So when you finish that and you connect all those dots, it's going to look like that. My dots. Anyway, it's kind of funny. All right, so that's our sine function. Extra dot there, sorry. It didn't match up. Extra sine function. I mean, those are our sine functions. Here's our cosine function. Then we're done. Okay? Well, poo. Okay, let's just go with it. So here, k is equal to 0. So my midline is y equals 0. My amplitude is 2. That's the number in front. My period is 2 pi over 4, which becomes pi over 2. So I'm going to go out 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to start at pi over 2. Half of pi over 2 is pi over 4. Okay? So I go out pi over 4. And now I am graphing a cosine function, so it starts at a max. That means on this point right here, okay, it doesn't start at my midline. It starts at a max. And we're going to go up 2, so this is the starting point. It ends at the same place it starts. And the cosine halfway between it is at a min. And then halfway between each max and min are my zeros. Or what I call them zeros, y'all. It crosses the midline, whatever your midline is. So this is here, and that is there. And when you connect them, that's going to look like this. And I'm going to get rid of those extra dots. All right, so that's our cosine function. Then we have our last cosine function, which again, I didn't keep the information from you. So k is 0. I'm not adding anything to it. So my midline is y equals 0. A is 4 because that's the number in front. And so that's my amplitude. My period is 2 pi over 2. That becomes 2 pi over 1 times 2 over pi because we keep change flip. My pi's cancel, leaving me with a period of 4. Okay, and just like what I've been doing, y'all, I'm going to go out 4 tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to label it 4. And then I'm going to go halfway, and that's 2. Now, my amplitude is 4, and I don't have enough lines on here, so I can label them however I want. So I'm going to put that as 2, and so I'm going to go by 2's. And that's -2 and -4. Okay, so now cosine starts at a max. So I'm going to start at 4 on this graph. I start at 4, and then I'm going to end at 4 at the end of a period, which is 4 units long. Halfway between is a min. Halfway between the max and min are zeros. And then I just continue that pattern because it is a periodic function. So when you connect it, it's going to look all pretty like, that. Should have done that earlier. So that's all there is to graphing. Make sure you can do that in Delta Math. He makes it pretty easy for you, and make sure curves nice, smooth, and continuous as they should be. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to come and see me. Thank you so much for watching.